If you're an extraordinarily compassionate person, let's say, 98th percentile will say, you're going to be sacrificing yourself to other people all the time. And there are people who will find that extraordinarily endearing. And it will be under some circumstances, but the problem is that you will sacrifice yourself. And so you will get taken advantage of continually by people who are looking for someone like you until you grow some teeth. And you'll think, no, that's the opposite of compassion. Being able to bite hard is the opposite of compassion, which it is. And so you'll have that pushed into the predator category. I'm not doing that. I'm not getting angry. I don't like conflict. It's like until you bring that out of the depths and put it on so you can use it, you're going to be in trouble. And that's kind of Nietzsche's idea of the revaluation of good and evil, right? You have a sense of what's good and a sense of what isn't with your conscience, but it's not very smart. It's got things in the wrong boxes. And a lot of the things that, even nature itself, a lot of the things that you accept as untrammeled goods, like compassion, let's say, have a very dark side, first of all, and second, are not enough to get you through life. You need the opposite virtues too. And so you have to develop them. The persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You know, you watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with the women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona. And a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say, harmless, but we could say a good person. But a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance. I read this interesting commentary a little while ago on a statement by Christ in the New Testament, and the statement generally interpreted is that the meek shall inherit the earth. But I was looking up the multiple translations of the word meek, and meek is actually derived from a Greek word, of course, because the Bible, at least some of the original forms of the Bible, were in Greek. And that word didn't exactly mean meek. It meant something like those who have weapons and the ability to use them, but determined to keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that means that people who are capable of force, let's say, but decide not to use it, are in the proper moral position. And Nietzsche commented on that a fair bit too. You know, he thought of most morality as cowardice, not because morality itself was cowardice, but because most people who are cowards disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity. And that's a really bad idea. So, you know, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So that's the persona. And the persona is the mask that you wear, and that's what persona means, is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming. Now, the shadow would be all the parts of the personality that the persona rejects, and that might be the aggressive elements. Certainly that's the case for people who are hyper-agreeable. And now you can tell, I think one of the best, there's two pathways to the development of the shadow, and they're tightly allied with one another. The fundamental pathway is truth, and that's to face the bitter truth about yourself. But to break that down more particularly, you might think about that as the capacity to observe your own resentment. You're going to be resentful and bitter in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you watch that resentment and bitterness, you'll see that it produces fantasies that can be unbelievably dark. And that can be very frightening, and you might not want to admit to yourself that you're actually capable of having fantasies like that, or impulses like that, or aggressive feelings like that. But the thing is that if those aggressive feelings and impulses and fantasies are integrated into your character, it's like you're opening up a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very forceful and strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous, because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. And so Anyways, you attend to your resentment honestly, and you observe yourself and what you're actually like. You got to pay attention as if you don't know yourself, as if you might harbor hidden devils, and then maybe they'll emerge. Now, Jung also felt that sort of embedded inside the shadow were the contrasexual tendencies. And so, for example, sometimes you see people who are well-developed, men, let's say, and we can also talk about women in this regard. Men who've integrated their shadow often also develop a kind of peculiar grace that would be a consequence of not only allowing their aggressive side to step forward, but also their feminine and compassionate side that they may have kept squelched because of embarrassment about it, or because they'd been harassed for being weak, or any number of things. So, but the practical approach for developing your shadow, I would say, is to contemplate and consider your resentment and notice what it says, and because your resentment will also tell you what you have to say. I am way too agreeable. What steps can I take to integrate my shadow and stop being a doormat? You're way too agreeable. Well, I would say you could practice saying what you really believe, that you can take a vow to tell the truth. And that will make you much less agreeable. Agreeable people are perfectly willing to sacrifice what they know to be the case to maintain short-term social harmony. And it's not so much that they repress what they think, it's often that they don't even allow themselves to fully realize what they think. So commitment to the truth can make an agreeable person, will stop an agreeable person from being a doormat. I mean, if you're in a relationship and the person is irritating you with something they've done, you might be highly motivated not to say anything about it because you want to keep the peace. You don't want to upset them. You don't want the conflict. That's all characteristic of high agreeableness. But once you decide to tell the truth, then if you're annoyed, you don't get to hide it. You don't get to assume you're right. You don't get to grab the person by the shirt collar and say, look, I'm annoyed and you're wrong. You get to say, I'm irritated about this situation, and I need to think through that irritation to find out if I have a problem, or if you have a problem, or if we both have a problem, or if it's a different problem altogether. But you can't hide the fact that the problem has made itself manifest. And so if you're agreeable and you tell the truth about your emotional state, that will propel you out of that agreeableness by necessity. And so, if you're feeling oppressed at work, or you're oppressed in your life, or you're oppressing yourself, then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter, and maybe even like Cain in the story of Cain and Abel, because Cain is sort of the archetypal bitter man. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness, and that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it, because you might be wrong, and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. And so many workplaces become toxic, to use a terrible cliche, because the people in them won't speak up for what they actually want, or they speak up too late, and then they're all twisted up about it, and they're torturing other people because they're so unhappy, and so forth and so on. So practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty. And Jung said that a genuine moral effort was a good substitute for psychotherapy. I think the most common problem that psychotherapists deal with, apart from anxiety and depression, is probably assertiveness training. So the first thing I would say is you really need to figure out what you want. And I would recommend doing the self-authoring program, the future authoring program in particular, because if you want to stand up for yourself, you have to have your goals and your vision well laid out and well defined, and then you have to have a strategy that is matched to those goals, so that you know what you want, so that you know when you're not getting it. Otherwise, you're left with a vague sense of dissatisfaction and resentment, and that's a very, very difficult thing to articulate. And If you can't articulate it, then you can't negotiate. If you know what you want and you know why, then you can make a case for yourself. Okay, so let's assume now that you've laid out a vision and a counter vision, which the Future Authoring Program also helps you do, so you know what kind of hell you want to avoid that you might drift into if you were too agreeable for the rest of your life. That would be a hell that consisted mostly of people taking advantage of you all the time and you feeling resentful and bitter about it. Not something I would recommend. I would say once you have your vision established, your vision for the future, and your counter vision, so you're afraid of what will happen if you don't stand up for yourself, then you need to consult your resentment. Because if you're resentful about something, as far as I can tell, there's generally only two reasons. One is you should grow the hell up and quit whining. So you got to find out first if you're just feeling sorry for yourself, and you can think that through, make a pro and con case, and you can talk to somebody that you care about that. I'm not assuming that that's the reason, but that's one potential reason. If you're not merely feeling sorry for yourself, then you probably have something to say and something that you need, and you need to figure out what that is, and then you have to develop a strategy to put that forward. I've seen lots of people in my personal life and in my private practice not get what they want because, well, A, they don't specify it, and B, they don't ask for it. And if you're negotiating, say, for a raise or for a promotion and so forth, you have to put yourself forward. You need to tell the person you're working for why you should be treated with more consideration or respect, or have more resources devoted to you, or more authority shifted to you. And you have to make a case for that, a compelling case, so that they have a reason to attend to you. And they're not going to notice, because most managerial types are so overloaded with work that they never notice when anything's going right. They just notice the things that are going wrong. So you need to make a plan. You have to have a strategy that goes along with that plan. You have to have articulated arguments for why a certain form of treatment is appropriate to you. And then you have to have the courage to put that forward. And I guess you have to remember that you owe yourself as much as you owe other people. You have to take care of yourself like you take care of other people. And that's a moral duty. And if you practice that, you can do it. And a lot of that's also associated with telling the truth. You don't have a better friend than the truth, even though it can be very harsh in the short term. And so if you're unhappy at work because you're being taken advantage of, then you have to strategize yourself out of that. You have to learn to negotiate. And a lot of that also means that you have to overcome your hesitancy to engage in conflict. And you got to think about it this way. Negotiation and conflict are somewhat indistinguishable. And it's easy moment to moment to avoid negotiation and conflict, but you pay a terrible price for it in the medium to long term. It's better to face the conflict forthrightly in the present and make peace for the medium to long term. And there's courage in that. So that's the other thing I would say is gird up your loins and allow yourself to act courageously and truthfully. Truth is your best bet if you're too agreeable. So, you also might find that you have a pretty good critical intelligence, but that you think it's mean, and so that you keep it hidden. Some of the smartest women I knew who were very, very agreeable had unbelievably good instincts with regards to figuring out what other people's motives were, but they were ashamed of their suspicions. And really what that meant was they ended up being ashamed of their critical intelligence because they were so agreeable. So it may be that the darker part of you, the shadow part of you, knows things that you could know if you were willing to admit that they were true. And so you have to give some credence to your darker element, I would say.
Anh hay mơ mộng mình thứ xa xôi, không màng về tình ái muôn nơi. Sống cho là trọn kiếp đây thôi, đâu quan tâm gì chuyện đời. Thế mà lại nằm tương tư, ông tầm bà mũi xe tơ. Đêm nằm trộm nhớ mơ mơ về ai. Thì ra anh yêu rồi, từ ánh mắt nụ cười, từ đôi môi gọi mưa sao xuyến lòng anh. Thì ra mê em rồi, ngày hay đêm ôm lời, chỉ nghĩ đến em thôi. Đó là do anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi. Oh, oh, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu em mất rồi. Anh hay mơ mộng mình thứ xa xôi, không màng về tình ái muôn nơi. Sống cho là trọn kiếp đây thôi, đâu quan tâm gì chuyện đời. Thế mà lại nằm tương tư, ông tầm bà mũi xe tơ. Đêm nằm trộm nhớ mơ mơ về ai. Thì ra anh yêu rồi, từ ánh mắt nụ cười, từ đôi môi gọi mưa sao xuyến lòng anh. Thì ra mê em rồi, ngày hay đêm ôm lời, chỉ nghĩ đến em thôi. Đó là do anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi. Oh, oh, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu rồi, anh đã yêu em mất rồi.